Many business owners make the mistake of assuming that their liability insurance policy renewal automatically happens once a year. Unfortunately, missing a policy renewal date generally leads to a gap in insurance coverage, and when it comes to a liability policy, a gap in coverage can result in significant financial losses. Simon Colman, underwriting executive at SHA Specialist Underwriters, joins me now to discuss how business owners can ensure that they're up to date with insurance payments. Simon, thanks so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. This is something that people forget, because certain things you think, I've signed it, now it's just going to automatically, it's like your cell phone contract, and you expect that it's just going to continue into perpetuity. Why is it important to check this?
Well, I mean, you know, you've got property, for instance, where you'd be changing the value of that property over the years.
Yeah.
And most people have gotten used to escalating those things. But with liability, you're not really insuring a tangible object. What you're doing is you're insuring the possibility that somebody could sue your company. So that amount might not change over the years. But if you don't sit down and look at those things with your broker, you may find that your business activities have changed over the years, for instance. I mean, right now in our economy, we're seeing businesses diversifying. You know, they're looking for different ways to make money, going into different markets, and that means that their exposure is changing. You know, a business that, for instance, is involved in manufacturing bottle tops and then decides they're going to get into manufacturing toys, those are two very different liability exposures. Yeah. And if they don't review that and tell their underwriters, when there's a claim, there could be a problem.
And I want us to get into some kind of concrete examples of the things that one needs to consider. Because, for example, if it's a home, and I know it's very different from liability insurance, but if it's a home, you have to think about the new things you've bought in and the value of the things, whether they've increased or decreased and so on. When it comes to liability insurance, what must be top of mind?
Yeah, look, it's a great analogy because you're quite right. As you're acquiring new things, you need to really reevaluate the insurance. And if you're running a business and last year you were doing an activity that you've either modified or you've decided not to do anymore, you've replaced it with something else, you need to be aware of the fact that that could be exposing you more than you were the year before. So I think it's really important to just look at, you know, who your clients are. Are you doing business outside of South Africa? I mean, who doesn't want to capitalize on a weak rand right now?
Yeah.
So if you're doing business outside of our territory, then what can you expect from the population in that country? Are they more litigious?
Yeah.
Are you exporting to the US? Because, I mean, let's face it.
They sue everybody.
They do. So one needs to be aware of these things.
Yeah. What are the possible repercussions that you've seen if one doesn't update?
Well, look, I mean, the worst thing that could happen, of course, is if a business doesn't renew their policy. So they may assume, as you said at the beginning, that it's just automatically renewed. Now, the difference between liability and property insurance is that when you have a property claim, you're normally aware of it. It's happening right now. The building is on fire, you're going to put in a claim. With liability claims, they often happen, the incident happens many years before you could even become aware of it. You know, somebody who injures themselves here in the studio, they might only realize how seriously injured they are in 2 years' time and then bring an action against the studio. I'm not going to do that.
Please don't.
But the point is, you know, if you've created a gap in your insurance, then if the claim had happened a few years before and it just wasn't renewed even for a couple of weeks, it means you've lost all of that historical protection.
Yeah.
And now the business has no insurance cover, and even if they start paying the premium again, can't buy back those years that they've lost.
Absolutely.
It's very dangerous.
There's also ensuring that you're not under-insured for something. So that calculation process, I suppose this is where it's important to be working with a professional.
You need to be using a broker, you know, and then with liability insurance, very tricky because often the environment is changing all the time. We've got new legislation. We've got a population that's becoming more and more aware of their rights, more and more litigious. So last year, 5 million rands worth of liability cover may have been adequate. We know what it costs to spend a week or two in court. That money's not going to go very far. So it's important to sit down, as you say, with a professional and make sure that the amount that's being purchased is adequate for the forthcoming year.
So some tips then, the things you need to be aware of, top 3 things.
Yeah, I'd say definitely get yourself a professional, a broker. Sit down and analyze the activities of the business, making sure that you've listed everything.
Yeah.
And if you had any incidents in the previous year, you may think it's insignificant. A customer that complained about a product, somebody that may have injured themselves in the shop.
Yeah.
You need to report all of those things to your insurer, even if there's no threat of litigation. And that will then ensure that you've still got cover.
In case it comes up 5 years later.
You never know.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks.
Simon Colman, Underwriting Executive at SHA Specialist Underwriters. Our daily question and answer feature is up next. Stay with us.